Hey everybody, how's it going today? Today is what? All the days seem to run together again. Today is Wednesday, somewhere in the middle of May. And things really greened up this year. You know, with a lot of the moisture we've had and spring coming on kind of early, things have really greened up. So we're going to take a walk today through a pretty special place and point out a lot of wildflowers, a lot of medicinal plants, and I'll ID them for you. So that'll be the main focus of this walk today. But I want to start with a little bit about why this area we're walking in is so rich in ground story flora and wildflowers. So what we're in here is a pretty good example of an Appalachian cove forest, a rich cove forest. So think about it this way, when you think of the Appalachian region that we're in, you might notice that there's no standing natural lakes here. All of the lakes in this area are man-made, and that has to do with glaciation. The last glacial epoch didn't make it all the way down here, so you didn't get the scouring and the kettle hole depressions that you would get, say, up in New England for standing swamps and lakes. Here it's a landscape of streams, right? Streams and coves and rivers. And we have two types of coves in the Southern Appalachians, two broad types of coves. We have rich coves and we have acidic coves. Any of you who have ever hiked up at Montreat and started up on the Montreat trails, you'll notice that you're going through these coves that are kind of V-shaped. They're very dramatic and V-shaped. You see a lot of rock outcrops, and you'll notice a lot of mountain laurel and rhododendron in those coves. Those are considered acidic coves, and one of the reasons you get those types of habitat there is when you have these dramatic V-shaped coves with these steep slopes, you don't get a lot of soil and moisture built up. It runs off quickly. You don't get a lot of nutrients because they run off quickly. So they're kind of shallow to bedrock, and you don't get the deep, rich cove soils that you get in these rich coves. These coves, like the one we're looking at here, are more bowl-shaped. They're not as dramatically shaped. And so they hold moisture, they hold nutrients, and they have soil built up, and you don't get the shallow bedrock protrusions. So you have this great neutral sometimes to slightly acidic soils that support some pretty important wildflowers and plants. Another thing you'll notice before we start walking as we go through here, there's not a lot of invasive species here. What we are on is the north side of a ridge. And again, in some of our earlier wanders, I talked about invasive species love south-facing, sunny, warm, high-energy sites. These south-facing slopes are really important habitat for native plants because the invasive species are unable to get hold in here. You know, we don't do a lot of extensive invasive species removal here because it's the north side of a ridge. Every year or so, we'll hand pull any invasives that get in, but we're not doing wholesale removal of invasives. This is naturally occurring due to the aspect of the land. North-facing slopes are shady, cool, and low energy, so you don't get a lot of these invasive species. So let's take a wander. Let's talk about some plants that we see out here. And we could start with one right here that's pretty common that we see a lot. This one here is black cohosh. This is one of my favorite plants. I love this plant. You see these compound leaves that are dissected, right? And they typically come up from three-way joints down here. Some people will ask me the difference between black cohosh and blue cohosh. They're completely different plants and completely different families. If we see blue cohosh, we'll point it out. But blue cohosh will be dissected like this, but the leaves won't have these fine, jagged teeth on them. They'll be a little more rounder with just a couple big teeth on them. So black cohosh, and I believe all the species I'll show you today, I'll point it out if something's different, but these are all perennial plants. So these are long-lived perennial plants, meaning they have a root and a rhizome. So there's a rhizome below ground, roots come off of that. You think of the rhizome as, think of it as a below-ground branch. So it would be a rhizome is below ground, and then the leaves come up off of that, and the roots come off of that, right? So that's a rhizome, they're rhizomatous. So black cohosh is an interesting one. It's starting to flower right here. It'll send up this big spike of white flowers, And it's pretty incredible. I might have Pete post it to along with this video. I have videos of bees and beetles and flies hitting those flowers, and they get so intoxicated they actually fall off of the flowers. It's amazing the party they have on these flowers, the pollinators. So black cohosh is not only an important plant for biodiversity, it's an important medicinal plant. This plant has phytoestrogens in it, it has some serotonin-like compounds in it, and it's being used for natural hormone replacement therapy for menopause. Big industry. Right now in Europe, it can be prescribed. Obviously here in the United States, it would only be a supplement. But this plant is a great example of what the herbal industry can do to some of these native plants. You know, think about ginseng. Everybody knows ginseng. And, you know, ginseng is not that particular. It grows in these types of sites. There's none out here. But it's not that there's none out here because the site isn't right and it's a very particular plant. It's not out here because ginseng was wholesale over-harvested across the southern Appalachians. So people think that ginseng is rare because it's really specific in its habitat. It's not, that's not the whole reason. The main reason you don't see ginseng is just it's over-harvested. So for its medicinal and monetary value. So, you know, one of the things I worry about is something like black cohosh, which could become $1 million industry in Western North Carolina if it's ever prescribed as a medicine for menopause. So one of the things, you know, right now, if you put me in the woods in this area and you give me 3 minutes, I can come back with black cohosh, right? But 200 years ago, 300 years ago, you might have given me three minutes and I could come back with ginseng, right? So one of the things I worry about is these plants, as they become popular for the medicinal trade, they'll be extirpated also and over-harvested. So what we're doing here at Warren Wilson, and in later videos, what we're doing here at Warren Wilson is we're propagating these plants from seed, not wild harvested plants, propagating them from seed to make available to landowners who want to have this economic value on their property, while alleviating the pressure off of native and natural populations. So this is black cohosh, beautiful plant, beautiful plant. If you crunch up the leaves a little bit, one of the old names for it was bugbane. There's a lot of plants called bugbane, but this one, if you crunch up the leaves a little bit and smell it, it has this very petroleum, chemically smell to it. And so that's black cohosh. Let's walk a little bit. Here's some more black cohosh here. There will be a lot of it. It's a pretty common plant out here in the forest when you get these cool north-facing slopes. This is one of the plants that's actually can do okay in more light as long as the soil is kept moist. It actually makes a really nice garden plant also. Oh, here's another great one. This one here is wild yam. This plant here, it's got an interesting morphology. It comes up, it's a vining species. But it comes up and it has these whorls of leaves that are pleated and heart-shaped. This is a type of yam. It has a very small, gnarly, kind of woody rhizome that you would never eat. But this plant has been valued in the past. It doesn't have progesterone in its rhizome, but this plant material is used as a precursor for developing certain types of hormone like progesterone. So that's wild yam, another great plant. Let's see what else we have out here. There's some more wild yam. Sourwood, kids love sourwood. Has oxalic acid in it. You break the vein, suck on it. It's kind of bitter. Some kids like it, some kids don't. Mayapple, you should all know mayapple by now. We've talked about mayapple. Here's a bunch of mayapple right here. Oh, and here's another great yam. You can see what it does. You can see the vining habit of it. And it's got these really small reduced flowers right here. This is another species we're working at propagating from seed. We have some luck, but nowhere near the luck we've had so far with black cohosh and golden seal and Solomon seal, which I'll show you in a little bit. Oh, here's a good one. They're all good. If you ask me, they're all good. I'll stop saying here's a good one. Here's another fine example of a forest botanical. So this here, you'll see these with these, again, This is a whorled leaf, right? I can pull this up. You can see how the leaves are all whorled. That means when they're all connected in a whorl at the same place on the stem. This is Indian cucumber is what this is called. It's actually a lily. I don't know if Pete can get on this really beautiful reduced flower right there. So this is a true lily, Mediola virginiana, but this is a fun one. Please don't pick our plants. I'm a highly trained professional and I know where we can harvest and not. The highly trained professional is a joke, knowing where we can harvest and not is not. But this is the bulb down here for this plant, right? This is it right here. And actually, if you blow it off, get rid of the dirt, and you eat it, it's really tasty. Pete, you want to try a piece?
Sure.
It tastes like a peppery cucumber, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It's really good. It's really tasty. You need a lot of them to make a meal. And, you know, I'm overstepping my bounds a little bit right here, but I could imagine natives in this area years ago, probably, I don't know if they would use this as a food stock, but it's really high in moisture. And I imagine on long treks through the woods, when you find patches of these, eating them would probably give you some hydration. So that's Indian cucumber. It's a lily. Beautiful lily. There's a couple more up here. Don't worry, Pete, I won't give you anything you shouldn't be eating. At least not until we're done filming. All right, here's a couple species people are always asking me about. Solomon seal and false Solomon seal are two species that a lot of people get confused. Again, I'm going to cut another plant, but it'll be okay. Let's see. So I want to point out these two plants. They look an awful lot alike, right? They have these alternating egg-shaped leaves. But if you'll notice, this plant here, the flowers are all starting on the tip, these little white flowers. It'll be a plume about that large when it's done. But if you notice this one, the flowers are drooped underneath the whole leaf, right here, and they're in pairs, right? This is a true Solomon seal. This is true Solomon seal. One of the species, the one I have here, is Polygonatum biflorum. The flowers are paired, and they're these urn-shaped flowers. This one is false Solomon seal, with all the flowers at the tip. So two different plants. Solomon seal is considered a medicinal plant. It's getting a lot more attention now than it had in the past. Our herb crew makes a ligament ointment out of it. If you have sore ligaments, makes an ointment to put on ligaments that helps with that. And also the rhizome has some mucousy kind of vitamin E type, not vitamin E, but similar to vitamin E compounds in it. And it's being used in face creams and hand creams. It's supposed to be good for your skin. So that's true Solomon seal with the flowers underneath, false Solomon seal with the flowers at the tip. Oh, here's a Trillium. Trillium right here looks like grandiflorum with the large flower underneath. So a lot of you know Trillium. There's many different varieties of species of Trillium here in the mountains, probably about a dozen. A lot of them need to be keyed out. So people will confuse this quite often with Jack in the Pulpit, right? Jack in the Pulpit has the three leaves, the same as Trillium does. Trillium and Jack in the Pulpit can grow in the same type of environment. Once you see the flower of a Trillium compared to the flower of a Jack in the Pulpit, which is a Spath and Spadex, it comes up like skunk cabbage, if anyone's ever seen that, you would never confuse the flowers. But when they're not flowering, you might confuse them. And there's one really cool trick to seeing which one is which I don't know if we can pick up right now on the camera. Maybe Pete can. But if you look at the side veins the vein, if you turn it over and you look at the veins that come out underneath the leaf on the Jack in the Pulpit, you see how they're all connected in a loop? I don't know, can you see that, Pete? A little bit?
Maybe.
They're all, each one of the veins is connected and looped together. Whereas if you look at the trillium, the veins come out and they just end at the edge of the leaf. They're not looped together like these are. And so that's one of the great tricks. If the veins, the side veins, are all connected along the edge and they actually form a little border around the edge, Jack in the Pulpit, if they go all the way out to the edge, then they are trilliums. You know, we're walking through lots of other species. There are a lot of hickory out here. A lot of, we to learn that one another time. That's Virginia creeper out here. There's a lot of anemones out here. These small plants here are anemones. We saw them on another hike. Hopefully you're starting to see some of these over and over again. You know, when my students are learning their plants, they ask me what the trick is. Well, first off, the trick is, yes, I know all these plants, but I wasn't born knowing them. I had to learn them just like everybody else. And for me, it was all repetition. Constant repetition, like learning a language, getting out and seeing them. You know, but one of the other tricks I tell them, I teach my students about 100 woody species out here, woody trees and shrubs. And they say, how the heck am I ever going to learn these? You know, we got 100 species to learn. How am I ever going to tell them apart? I say, learn one. Learn red maple. Once you know red maple, if you walk up and it's not red maple, then you know it can only be 99 others. Learn red maple and white oak. And once you learn red maple and white oak, if it's not one of those two, you know you only have 98 to work with. And at some point, you know most of them, and if you know it's not them, then you investigate a smaller and smaller amount each time. They raise their eyes at me raise their eyebrows at me just like all you are now. Another great example of an area that's not invaded, right? Doesn't have a lot of invasive species in it. I'm going to walk down, I'm going to show you 2 or 3 more species, and then we'll call it a day today. Here's another species that's really common in the medicinal trade. Some of you might already know this one. This one here is bloodroot. Sanguinaria canadensis, bloodroot. This is a fun one. This is one of the first flowers you'll find in the winter, in the spring, just after winter. And it's kind of cool. All the flowers are gone now, but it'll send up a flower stem that'll come right in here in the cleft in these leaves. And quite often, when it gets cold, you'll see the leaves kind of close up around it. And then it'll open back up again. It's got this, generally speaking, it looks kind of like a kidney, I guess. It's kind of a rounded with 3 lobes. But this one is an important medicinal, and the reason it's called bloodroot, if you cut it, you can notice why it's called bloodroot. There's an alkaloid in here, sanguinarine. It's somewhat caustic. It won't bother your hard skin, but if you have soft skin or you put it on really soft areas of your arm, it can cause some small rashes. This was used quite often, and still is, as a poultice to remove skin ulcers, warts, that type of thing. It was actually used in toothpaste for a while in the 60s, until people started finding out, yes, it made your teeth white, but it also gave you ulcers, little ulcers on the inside of your mouth. It's being used right now. It's an anti-helminthic. What I mean by an anti-helminthic is it kills worms, right? So it's being put in cattle feed right now to deworm cattle is a use for it. And it's also been looked at for cancer research, specifically, I believe, breast cancer research. But one of the problems is it kills healthy cells and bad cells, cancer cells, so they can't direct it at just the cancer cells. So this is bloodroot, another great plant. And here you can see an example of, this is the leaf, the stem, this is the rhizome, and these are the roots coming off of that rhizome. Oh, put that back in the ground. So that's bloodroot. I'm going to walk down here a little bit. point out a couple other ones that are kind of a little bit rarer that some of you might not know yet. This one here is one that's pretty rare around here. You don't see it very often. This is twin leaf. This is twin leaf, and you can see why it's called twin leaf, right? A lot of people probably walk right by it thinking it's bloodroot. But this is twin leaf. It has an interesting name, Jeffersonia diphylla. Jeffersonia, it was named after Thomas Jefferson. Supposedly he liked to grow this at Monticello, and it was one of his favorite wildflowers. Diphylla, two leaf. So that's the diphylla part. This is another really early spring flower that comes up. And this one has already set seed. And this is kind of cool. I don't want to dig this up, but you can see the seed capsule right here. I don't know if you can focus in on that, but this is the seed capsule right here. And if you notice this little suture right here, it's really cool. It's a capsule that has these seeds inside the capsule, and when they're ready, that top opens up like a jack-in-the-box. And they're dehiscent. By dehiscent, that means the seeds are spread. When it opens up, the seeds come flying out and are spread out, almost shot out of it. So that's a really fun one. And this one also has some of the same compounds as golden seal. It's got some berberine in it, antimicrobial properties. And then the last one I want to show you is this one here. This is false unicorn root. Great plant. This is another plant that is highly regarded for its medicinal purposes. It grows in these what we call basal rosettes. Basal rosettes are leaves that stay to the ground, and then it sends up a flower stalk with some smaller leaves on it, and here's the flower on this one. This one is seen as a whole body adaptogen like ginseng to make a tonic for the immune system. So this is a really important plant also for the medicinal trade. This is one I worry about because it is so slow growing. It's incredibly slow growing. So, you know, this plant here could be 10, 15 years old. And that's one of the problems with a lot of these medicinals. They're very slow growing and it takes them a long time to mature. So it's not like picking a dandelion where there's going to be 1,000 other dandelions to take its place. When these plants leave a site, it takes years and years and decades, and sometimes they never even get back into the site because they're so slow growing and they don't disperse well. So those are some of the plants, both economic, medicinal, and just pretty plants that grow in a basic cove forest here in the Southern Appalachians. Till next time, have fun, stay safe. Oh, and a small public service announcement. Yes, in North Carolina, in Buncombe County, Phase 1 COVID-19 has gone into effect and some of the state parks are open. We are still closed. Our trails are still closed to outside folks. It kills me. I hate it. I can't wait until we open up the trails for folks. But the difference between our trails and state parks is that we have people living here, we have people working here, and we still can't have the traffic back and forth on campus from off campus. So somebody asked me today when the trails will be open. I can't say when, but I will say that when they're open, you'll know it. And somebody did ask me how they'd know it, and I said I'd be walking the trails handing out champagne to everybody. Probably won't happen, but you'll know when the trails are open. So till next time, have fun.